welcome to my channel. Hi guys. So I was gonna grab a nice cap, but I decided to have something different. I'm so thirsty. I've been stuck in traffic for the better half of 2 hours, and I've been having problems on the road, and I'm gonna vlog it a little later. It's all related to that one particular person who keeps accessing the hard drive of my camera and my computers, and I believe he's doing things off and on with the help of somebody else that I might know. But I'm not going to dwell on it. I just want to mention I'm under stress, and so. But anyway, later on today, I'm actually on my way to pick up a few things for an upcoming recipe, and I need some things for my cat as well. And so we're going to be getting into the second part of the Marilyn Monroe story. And so I hope that you stick around for that. We're continuing with her childhood. And so it's a very complex childhood and very key to her entire life. And so I really want to vlog it properly. And I'm going by a biographical book written by John Baker. And so I'm assuming John Baker was related to Norma Jean Baker, or Gladys Baker for that matter. I'm not sure, but it's too much of a coincidence to ignore. So I'm going to show you the book a little bit later. I have a total of about 8 huge books on Marilyn Monroe, and so I've always been such an avid fan of hers, and I've collected all of those big picture encyclopedias about her. And so yeah, that's what's on the agenda for today: a little shopping and Marilyn Monroe. So guys, I think I'll leave the little bit of ranting and raving I have to do for later on. I have my juice, and so I think we should just get right into the Marilyn Monroe story. And I'm probably going to finish off the last little part later on tonight after I pick up a few things at the grocery. And so, okay, let's get into it. And so guys, where we left off last time was it was very sad. Gladys Baker, Norma Jean's mom, had been providing for Norma Jean, and Norma Jean at this time was about 8 years old, and she had been in foster care, but she was now living with her mom in a beautiful little bungalow, which was partly rented out to an older English couple who did work in the film industry. And this couple had an older daughter, an adult daughter, and so they were older. They were mature, they were wise, and they were very affluent and in the Hollywood scene. And so what happened was, let me see. Hold on. So the gentleman who rented out in Gladys Baker's home was a stand-in for the celebrity George Arliss. And the wife was known as an extra, and that she had walk-on parts, and she was featured in drawing room comedies. You know, not a big star, but working in the film industry on a regular basis. And so the daughter became a stand-in for the beautiful actress Madeleine Carroll. So they were all working in the film industry. And so when Gladys was whisked off to the hospital, this family displayed such a great and enormous affection, and I'm so glad, towards Norma Jean and obviously Gladys Baker. And obviously they became attached to the owner and the owner's little girl. And so they retained the house and they looked after the child. That was wonderful, guys. And I'm sure that that was when Norma Jean's um, fantasies and obsession with Hollywood and about Hollywood became solidified. And they they actually helped. I'm pretty sure that she was probably on the set a few days. They were, Norma Jean was in their care, so she would have had to have gone with them at some point. And so the couple did sell some of the furniture to keep up the mortgage payments, and they may have applied to the county for additional support for the child. This is sad, guys. My heart aches for Gladys. Um, Norma Jean became an official county child, and a couple of years later, she must have been about 10 when this actually became um, concrete. I guess people were not exactly sure what would have happened with Gladys. Maybe Gladys was not responding to treatment. And I know treatment back then was pretty harsh. Medications were not that, they were not that advanced in those days for illnesses such as the one that Gladys suffered. And I'm hoping that it was the proper and appropriate diagnosis. But this arrangement, um, uh, with the couple taking care of Norma Jean, it did not last that long. And so when the actor George Arliss retired, the stand-in role was no longer necessary. And so that deeply affected Norma Jean's life. And of course, the life of the actor who was the stand-in. So, wow, that's sad. So when the English gentleman who was renting in the home of Gladys Baker lost his job, the family moved into furnished accommodation and took Norma Jean with them. Now that's really highly commendable. Here they were practically out of work. Well, at least one person was. And they took this orphan Norma Jean. I'm sure that couple made such a positive impact on Norma Jean. They eventually did decide, however, that they had to return to England. And Norma Jean, once again, was left at the mercy of the state and county. So, wow. Can you imagine becoming attached to a family that provided you with love and support, and then all of a sudden, but they didn't do it out of heartlessness. They did it out of necessity, right? And so what happened at that point was that Norma Jean returned to her baby foster home where the Bolanders lived. And so uh, some other biographers really came down hard on the Bolanders, but there seems to be no direct evidence for this. Maybe they knew people who knew the Bolanders, and so they wrote things that were not that great. However, because of their strict moral, religious, fundamentalist attitude, it was, hold on, guys. I have to turn off the camera. So I lost my place. And so they were very strict and morally upright and very religious. And you know what I've said about pedophiles. They have that religious and stern moral front. And so I'm not saying that the Bolanders were pedophiles. I'm saying that they fit into that mold, that category. And so it was obviously not a fun place for Norma Jean, who was by then becoming interested in more mature things and concerns and issues. Um, you know, she remembered, Marilyn remembered a lot about salvation and having been brainwashed about salvation, and they used a strap. I don't know. I don't want to get into that. I'm imagining they went out of their way probably to make Norma Jean remember that she was not one of them. Now, I'm not sure exactly how bad it was. So that's why I'm not going to dwell on this part. But I imagine she suffered. And so it's too bad that the older English couple, could not have made a go of the gentleman's acting career. So that's too bad. And so at the time, um, I, I'm not sure if this was when Norma Jean was a baby or when she was there later on in life, but the Bolanders were all also taking care of a small foster child who was a boy named Lester. And so, according to the Bolanders, they were doing the best that they could for Norma Jean. And so maybe that is actually true. Um, I'm not sure. So what was going on exactly was that oh, I hate it when I lose my place. Um, it was the fact that he and Norma Jean, Lester and Norma Jean, were good companions. They became playmates, and so I remember having a boy as a playmate when I was quite young, and it can really give you a different slant on life, and so it can make life a lot more interesting. And it might also explain why I became a tomboy when I was a little girl. But anyway, so I think that probably the household did have some very strict guidelines because these children were not the Bolanders' children. So they had to really toe the line. And sometimes foster children can come from very hard and trying environments. So you need to be stricter with them. And so I think that probably they were doing the best of their ability. And so, you know, um, popular music, alcohol, and good behavior. Um, they had all kinds of rules surrounding those issues, and so I'm imagining that Norma Jean would have probably, maybe she might have had some problems following them. I'm not sure. Um, I don't know about alcohol. So, whatever habits that she picked up later on in life, I'm sure they were reinforced by that kind of rigid environment. And so, I can see that actually making things worse for her later on in life. However, Norma Jean seems to have had a normal enough life, and she seemed happy enough, and she certainly, you know, comes across as a very well-groomed and beautifully dressed young lady in early photographs, which I am striving to collect. Um, I have them in the books, but I don't have them online. And so she indeed was a very pretty teenager. And so there were toys and parties and trips to the beach, and there was a pet dog. So all of her lifelong passions were reinforced during this time with the Bollanders. And so the hound was called Tippy. And this dog to Marilyn was very special. And she did develop a very intense affection for pets. Now, what happened to this dog is very instrumental in forming the basis of Norma Jean's underlying affection and feeling towards animals. And there are various stories as to what exactly happened to Tippy, but it would seem that in one sense he was run over by an automobile because he ran loose in the evenings. And in those days, the bylaws about animals and tags was not obviously very strict. And other stories indicate that a neighbor attacked it with some sort of garden tool or a shovel or a spade or something. Um, as for Norma Jean and her adoption situation, the Bolanders tried to say or indicate that they indeed wanted to or considered formally adopting Norma Jean. I don't understand why that conversation would have come up, but Gladys would not allow this. And so I'm thinking, if Gladys was not well, uh, was she well enough to have that kind of capability about her? Gladys would not allow the adoption, and so I guess at that point Gladys was working towards getting herself and her child under one family roof again, and so I'm not sure exactly. What I'm saying is, I'm not sure to what extent the illness had affected Gladys Baker and her everyday thinking skills. You know what I'm saying? I certainly think that she did indeed intend to come out of it again and to get back into the swing of work and life, but it never happened, guys. Maybe she probably progressively got worse. Maybe she was one of those types of people who develop dementia early. We don't know. I don't know. But certainly schizophrenia was in her clinical description of the diagnosis that the doctors gave her. And so it was not likely that she would be able to overcome that just like that. So, besides Gladys Baker being in a psychiatric ward or a hospital, there was the matter of Norma Jean's maternal grandmother, that would be Gladys's mother, Della Monroe. And Della Monroe was born in Missouri, like Molly Brown. And so she was born in 1876. And so not long after Molly Brown. So like so many other families, the that family was driven by poverty in those days. And they moved west to seek work in California. And in 1899, Della married Otis Monroe, And okay, so Della's maiden name was Hogan, and she married Otis Monroe. And so when they got married, they moved to Mexico, and that was where Gladys was born. So Gladys wasn't, she was born in Mexico, but her parents were American. Wow, I wonder why they moved to Mexico, though. I mean, I would imagine that things would have had to have been pretty desperate for them to have moved to Mexico. But I do know that in those days, poverty was very widespread. You know, it was really bad. I'm talking before the stock market crashed. So, you know, things must have been very terrible for them to have had to move that far west. And so, what happened was Gladys was born, and then Della and Otis had mental health issues, and they were precarious, as the biographer describes. And this biographer's name is Baker. So, um, yeah, I'm imagining that this biographer is very familiar with the family history. And so by the time Norma Jean was born, Della, her grandmother, returned from a trip to India. Wow. Well, she had followed her third husband, a man called Granger, an oil engineer, and established herself in Hawthorne, across the way from the Bolender house. Wow. So Norma Jean had her maternal grandmother living across the street. And so I imagine, guys, that this may not have been a very good situation for Norma Jean. Given the facts that John Baker is telling us, this woman was not in a good state of mind. And so what happened was that Della, the grandmother, joined the Evangelist Gospel Church, and her marital problems with the exposure of that church as a fraudulent religious group seemed to have tipped her right over the edge. And so, right into insanity. And so, not only was Gladys's mother, but also her grandmother, um, you know, I can't believe that Norma Jean had to go through this. So, this is, now I'm not sure exactly. I believe that Norma Jean was just an infant when this situation was going on with her grandmother. The marital problems, the religious fraud, or the church fraud, I should say. And at the time that Norma Jean claims she was smothered by Della, Della was 51, and she was actually very far gone. So what happened was that, and I have known other people in my life to do this. One minute she was smothering Norma Jean with affection and love, and the next minute she was throwing a hysterical fit on the sidewalk, and was finally committed to the same institution where Gladys was, the Norwalk State Hospital, where she died of a heart attack during a severe mental breakdown. So I'm really wondering, Norma Jean, did she ever have a chance to have witnessed and gone through all that? I would imagine that she was on the verge of giving up, right? Anyway, it could not have been easy for Norma Jean as Norma Jean got older. And I'm talking about her 20s and 30s. And so after knowing all of this, and in those days it must have been very severe, because if you did not adhere to normal, conventional, and traditional norms of society, you could be labeled crazy. I'm sure it must have been very bad in those days. But still, to throw a fit on the public sidewalk is actually not good. And so Norma Jean spent the rest of her life trying to die down all those horrific instances where um, she would actually, try to be proving something to herself by keeping herself sane. I can't imagine how difficult that must have been for her. Wow. So, guys, that's it for now. I'll finish the rest of the story, part two, I should say, a little later, because I want to push off and pick up a few things at the store before I go home. And I have to say, I'm having a really bad day. The person that I saw the other week, he has inundated all of the places where I shop. I just came from Dollarama, and when I came out, there was a big, long scratch on my car. And somebody was kind enough to tell me exactly what happened, but nobody got any particulars. And I know who it was too, but I never got the license tag down, because you never do that when you're going into a store, right? So I know exactly who it was, and I had to report that. And, I have to say that this guy that I'm talking to about, who works in my building, I've caught him so many times coming after my car. At one point, he used to put on those little, what do you call those things, in the long fake beard, and drive around following me all day. Finally, I realized it was him when I saw that beard shift off. I can't imagine somebody wanting to attack a woman that badly. He must need some sort of help. Anyway, that is exactly what I'm going through. Whenever I get it's at the point where I'm entering or exiting a store, buzzards go off or the doors lock. And so that's him, guys. That's him. He's been turning off my electricity. He's been toying with the plumbing. He doesn't know what to do next. I'm not paying any attention to him. I'm not interested in him. I never will be. And the fact of the matter is that people like that, what happens is that they exploit children. They talk to children, they give children favors, they do things for them, they give them gifts, and then my life becomes a hell. And it never lets up. He thinks it's fun. Okay, enough ranting. I'm going to the store to pick up a few things. I'll see you there. I'm ready. I've already explained this haul to you in another vlog. So it's the exact same haul that I feature in my other vlog. So if you really want to know the details, I'm going to just stay tuned, okay? And anyway, I'm ready to go on with the second part of the Norma Jean Baker story. And so let me put these things away and then we'll sit down and chat about it, okay? I'll see you later. So guys, let's get started with the second part of the story of the Marilyn Monroe story. And I have to tell you, just lost about an hour's worth of footage because this, you know who accessed my camera and I lost it all. And so where we left off this afternoon was that Norma Jean's mom, Gladys, went into the institution and the elderly English couple left for England. And so what happened was that Norma Jean then went on to a series of foster homes, and she eventually ended up in the Orphanage Home Society that was very close to the RKO Studios. And so RKO Studios happened to be the same studio where her mother, Gladys Baker, had worked as a film cutter. Now, this biographer seems to think that it was Gladys Baker and her refusal to let Norma Jean leave the state or become adopted by any other family that really destroyed Norma Jean's chances at a nice, normal childhood. Well, whether or not I agree with that, essentially that is true. However, coming from the fact that Gladys Baker lost her first two children that she had with her previous husband, who took them both away from her. That would have been Bernice and Hermit. He took them away from her, and so she looked on to Norma Jean as her only family, even because of what was going on with Norma Jean's grandmother, Della. They both ended up in the same institution, Gladys and Della. And so it wasn't a very good or happy childhood at all for Norma Jean. However, it was very clear that by the time Norma Jean got to be about 9 years old, she definitely knew that she was going to be a movie star. And between the time that she turned 10, maybe not right at 10, but by the time that she started modeling, Norma Jean began to acquire this very developed and mature sense of self. And she took to going on visits with her mom's friend, Grace, who was then a single female. And what happened is that when she went with Grace for visits, Grace would let her experiment with makeup. And what happened also was that by the time Norma Jean got to be 10 years old, she had really grown so tall and looked very much more mature than her peers who were the same age. And so she began to become very precocious about her looks, very conscious about the way that she was dressed and groomed, and she absolutely adored makeup. And Grace was a single female, so she did try to take Norma Jean in for a while, but her living situation, mainly the home security, posed to be a very big risk and a challenge for Norma Jean to come and stay permanently. So what happened was Norma Jean was removed by the orphanage, and then she was removed. She went to live with Grace in 1937, and then she went back to the orphanage. And After going back to the orphanage, she was adopted into several different foster homes, not adopted legally, of course. And one was an alcoholic, one was abusive. Norma Jean could not possibly have endured that. So what happened was Norma Jean began training around the block by the RKO studios, and she ran and jogged every morning, and she developed a very keen sense of how important it would be to train her body as a model and maybe as a dancer, a singer, whatever have you. She was determined to make it, although it must have been a very bleak dream. And so, in a way, her dream kept her close to her mother. And I believe that Norma Jean didn't dream that dream of becoming a movie star like all the other little girls around her did. I think that she dreamed that dream so she could feel close to her mother. And that is the saddest of sad. I can't imagine what she must have felt at that age. Anyway. And so what happened was that Grace, you know, she was trying. And it wasn't easy in those days. And even now, it's not easy to adopt if you're a single parent. Not all the time, right? And so what happened was Grace had her sights set on Edwin Goddard, or Doc Goddard. And so Doc Goddard, he had a daughter from a previous marriage. And so Grace was dating him, but she wasn't married to him. She really did have her sights set on him, though. And so what happened was, in 1937, after Norma Jean left Grace's house and began all those stints in those different foster homes, she finally went back to Grace in 1938. It was January, after Grace married Goddard. And so Goddard's daughter, Bibi, and Norma Jean, and Grace all lived in the same house. And it was very pleasant, and it was very homey and relaxed. However, now, by the time that all this had settled down, it was time for Norma Jean and Bibi to both start junior high together. And so they actually, I believe it was Emerson High School, I think, Emerson High School. And so that was the start of something, because Norma Jean had finally gotten free of the institutionalized life that she had been living since her mother ended up in the hospital. And now she could just let her hair down and relax. And it did seem that Norma Jean was going to blossom into becoming this wonderful actress, model, student, whatever have you. However, things started to go a little weird after a while, and I'll tell you why. And so it was Emerson Junior High School that Norma Jean attended with Bibi Goddard. And so at this point in Norma Jean's life, two things happened. One was good and one was not very good at all. And so the first thing would be that Grace's maternal aunt, I believe it was, Anna Lower, came into Norma Jean's life as an aunt grandma type figure. And Norma Jean has been quoted as saying she is the first person, I'm assuming besides her mom, because Norma Jean was very young when she last saw her mother. She says Anna Lower was the first person that she ever loved, that Norma Jean ever loved, and the first person who ever loved Norma Jean back. That's the big important part. Norma Jean was open and free to give love, but she didn't really ever receive an awful lot of it back, right? We don't know how her relationship was with other people. We can only imagine that they were just trying to do what was right for themselves, more than for love and care of Norma Jean. However, Grace did try quite hard with Norma Jean. And so the other thing that occurred was that one night a drunken Doc Goddard, or Edwin Goddard, did something to Norma Jean. And I don't think he did much, but he did something intentionally stupid and wrong, and made a pass at her. And so it ruined everything, guys. It ruined everything. And things were never the same after that. And so I'm going to break off in a minute, and we'll continue next time. But after that incident with Grace's husband, things were very awkward and weird. And I can't imagine how Norma Jean might have felt. And I'm hoping that it wasn't made up and that it really did happen, because I don't see it as being Norma Jean's character to do something like that than to make something up. However, she went to live with Aunt Anna in her very posh Hollywood home in West Hollywood. And so, wow, who could get luckier than Norma Jean at that point? And so at this point in Norma Jean's life, she began to experience other aspects, like the Christian Science Church, and made new friends. And so for a while, she was settling down again. And so I'm going to leave it off right here, and we'll continue, because her childhood is indeed extremely complex and filled with details and events that really need to be told, because not everybody understands what kind of a complicated life this woman really did have. And so, you know, it's unbelievable that Norma Jean could have lived a life so filled with unhappiness and have been so warm and generous with everybody. I'm sure she had problems, guys. But on the whole, I'm amazed that she accomplished so much with all the problems that she had to endure. And so let's leave it here, that she went to live with Aunt Anna in West Hollywood. And so we'll pick up from here next time. And I hope that you've enjoyed listening to this story. And hopefully that you're finding it very interesting. I know that I'm finding it so fascinating. Even though I have read this book from cover to cover so many times, it is absolutely filled with beautiful photographs and pictures on the inside. And I have 7 more like this. So thank you very much for listening and watching. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye for now.